My family stole $150,000 for my sister's wedding, but when I sued them, they lost their house, she lost her fiancé, and I destroyed everything they built. I'm 33 years old. I work at a tech company doing data analysis, and what my parents did to me a few months ago basically left me without a family, but with $150,000 I never asked for, and a story I still can't believe is real. The thing is, I always knew my parents preferred my sister Jennifer. I mean, that was obvious since we were kids. But I never thought they'd go so far as to literally commit fraud with my identity just to give her the perfect dream wedding. And when I say fraud, I mean serious fraud. I'm not exaggerating one bit. I guess I should start by explaining what my family was like before all this. Jennifer is like 28 now, I think, and she was always the spoiled one, the golden child who could do whatever she wanted, and my parents would just smile and say how wonderful our daughter is. I was the older son, the responsible one, the one who got good grades and worked hard and was basically invisible unless they needed something from me. It's not like my parents were abusive, too, or anything dramatic like that. It was just evident that she was their priority, and I was kind of the secondary son in the background. I remember when I was like 16, I wanted to go to a computer camp in the summer, something that would have helped me tremendously for my career, and my parents said we didn't have money for that. But 3 weeks later, Jennifer wanted a trip to Disney with her friends, and suddenly there was like $2,000 available. That kind of thing happened all the time, and I just learned not to expect anything from them. So anyway, I grew up, went to college, got a decent job in tech after graduating, and basically kept my distance from the family as much as I could without being rude. I'd see my parents at Christmas and Thanksgiving, call my mom every 2 or 3 weeks, and I barely talked to Jennifer because honestly, we had nothing in common. She worked in, I don't know what, marketing or PR thing, changed jobs every year or so, and lived in an apartment that, obviously, my parents were helping her pay for, because there was no way she could afford it on her own with the jobs she had. But whatever. It wasn't my problem. Or so I thought. About 2 years ago, I started seriously planning to open my own business. I'd been working in software development and data analysis for almost 10 years already. I had good contacts in the industry, and I'd identified a niche in the market where I could offer specialized consulting services. I was saving aggressively, had a solid business plan, and basically just needed to accumulate a bit more capital to be able to quit my job and dedicate myself full-time to this. I'd told my parents about my plans at one of those awkward family dinners, and they said something generic like, "That's nice, son. We wish you luck." But it was obvious they weren't very interested. Jennifer didn't even look up from her phone when I talked about it. In January of this year, Jennifer announced that her boyfriend Nathan had proposed. I barely knew Nathan. I'd seen him maybe 3 times at family gatherings. He seemed like a normal guy with a normal job, nothing spectacular, but nothing bad to say about him either. My parents were absolutely ecstatic. My mom literally screamed with excitement when Jennifer showed them the ring, and from that moment, everything in the family revolved around the wedding. They invited me to lunch like 2 weeks after the engagement to celebrate, and I spent 3 hours listening to Jennifer talk about venues and dresses and flowers and all this shit I honestly cared zero about. What did catch my attention was when she mentioned she wanted a big wedding, like 200 guests, at a super elegant place, with the whole complete package. My dad was nodding his head and saying, "Of course, honey, you deserve the best." And I was thinking, where are they going to get the money for that because my parents aren't rich? I mean, they have decent jobs, but nothing extraordinary. Months went by, and I kept on. With my normal life, working, saving, preparing my startup. They didn't invite me to any of the wedding planning meetings, which seemed weird at first, but then I thought, well, maybe it's just a thing between Jennifer and my parents and her friends. I didn't give it much importance. What I did notice is that my parents seemed more stressed than normal when I talked to them. My mom especially seemed tense and distracted, but I assumed it was from the stress of planning a big wedding. Then we get to August. I was at my office on a normal Tuesday, working on a project, when I get a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, and it was someone from the loan department of a bank. I'm not going to say which one specifically, but it's a big one, and the woman very politely says, "Hello, Mr. Andrew. We're calling to verify some details of your loan application." And I'm like, "Excuse me, what? I haven't applied for any loan." and she's silent for a moment and says, "Well, we have here an application for a $150,000 personal loan where you appear as co-signer, along with Mr. and Mrs." And she says, "My parents' names," and I'm literally going blank because what the hell is happening? I tell the woman there must be some mistake, that I definitely didn't sign anything, and she tells me she's going to verify the documentation and call me back. I hang up and just sit there feeling like I'm in a nightmare because I'm already connecting the dots in my head, but I don't want to believe it. I call my mom immediately, goes to voicemail. I call my dad, doesn't answer either. I send them text messages saying I need to talk to them urgently, to call me now. 2 hours pass without response, and I'm already completely paranoid. I can't concentrate on work. I'm looking up bank information on my computer. The woman from the bank calls me back around 4 p.m. and tells me, "Mr. Andrew, I've reviewed the documentation, and there is indeed a signature with your name on the loan papers, and the loan was already approved and disbursed 3 weeks ago." She tells me the money was deposited into a joint account in my parents' names, and that according to the contract, I'm responsible for 50% of the loan payment. I'm telling her that can't be my signature, that I never signed anything, that this has to be fraud, and she very professionally tells me it would be best if I went to a bank branch with identification to review the documents in person. I tell her I'm heading there immediately. I leave the office like a zombie, drive to the bank, and meet with a manager who shows me all the documentation. And there it is, my name perfectly written. A signature that looks pretty similar to mine, but that I definitely didn't make. All my personal information correct. Date of birth, social security number, address, everything. And the loan terms that basically said the money had to be paid back in 24 months with an 8% interest rate. I do the quick math in my head, and we're talking about monthly payments of like $6,700 for 2 years. I make good money, but not enough to pay that and live normally at the same time. And I definitely can't do it if I want to open my business, which requires me to leave my stable job. I tell the bank manager this is fraud, that I didn't sign this, and he tells me I need to file a formal complaint with the police and with the bank for them to investigate. He gives me copies of all the documentation, and I leave there feeling like I'm going to throw up. I drive straight to my parents' house, don't even call them first, just go. I get there, and both of them are there, sitting in the living room like nothing's wrong, watching TV. My dad sees me come in, he still have a key to their house, and says, "Oh, Andrew, we didn't know you were coming," and I just dump all the loan papers on the coffee table in front of them and say, "What the fuck is this?" The silence that followed was probably the most tense moment of my life. My mom looks at the papers and goes, pale. My dad turns red, and I just stand there waiting for an explanation. Finally, my dad says, "We can explain," and I say, "You better be able to, because I just came from the bank where they told me you took out a $150,000 loan with my name without my permission." My mom starts crying and says they were going to pay for everything, that I wasn't going to have to worry about anything. And I'm like, that's not the point. The point is you committed fraud, forged my signature, put me in massive debt without consulting me. My dad gets defensive and tells me it's my duty as family to help them, that Jennifer needed that money for her wedding and they didn't have enough, and that they thought since I have a good job and don't have big expenses, you don't have kids. I'm not married. I don't own a house. Yet. I could help. I tell them they have no right to decide that for me, that if they had asked me for help directly, I would have said no, but at least it would have been my decision. My mom keeps crying and saying, "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry." And I tell her being sorry doesn't fix anything. That now I'm legally tied to a $150,000 debt. That completely destroys my plans to open my business. Then my dad says something that honestly left me frozen. He says, "Well, anyway, that business plan of yours was probably going to fail. At least this way the money gets used for something important like your sister's wedding." And in that moment, something broke inside me, because there was the truth of what they really thought of me. To them, I was just a financial resource. My dreams and plans didn't matter compared to giving Jennifer her perfect wedding. I tell them I'm going to report this as fraud to the police and the bank, and my mom starts begging me not to, that it's going to get them in a lot of legal trouble, to think about the family. And I tell them, maybe they should have thought about that before committing a federal crime. My dad stands up and yells at me that I'm ungrateful, but that after everything they did for me, this is how I repay them, and I literally laugh in his face because what did they do for me exactly? Raising you doesn't count as doing something special. That's literally the minimum expected of parents. I leave there without saying anything else, completely shaken, and drive home thinking about what I'm going to do now. The first thing I do the next day is call my friend Peter, who's a lawyer, not specialized in fraud but knows people who are. I tell him the whole story, and he tells me this is definitely identity fraud, and I can prosecute both criminally and civilly. He connects me with a specialized attorney, and we start the process of officially reporting it. But before making it official, Peter gives me advice that at first seemed very extreme, but that I later decided to follow. He tells me, "You have to think about all the angles here. Your sister is going to get married with this money that was basically stolen from you, her future husband. Probably has no idea what happened. Maybe you'd want him to know what kind of family he's getting into." And you know what? He was right. I look up Nathan on social media, find his profile, find his parents' profiles too, and I send all three of them a message explaining the whole situation. I tell them textually, "Hi, I'm Andrew, Jennifer's brother. I don't know if you know this, but the wedding you're planning is being financed with $150,000 that my parents stole from my identity. I never authorized this loan, and they forged my signature. I thought you should know before this becomes legal and public." I send the messages, and honestly, I feel a bit bad about involving Nathan in this. He's not at fault for anything, but I also think he deserves to know the truth. Things exploded after that. I mean, completely. Like 2 hours later, I get a furious call from Jennifer screaming at me. How dare I ruin her life? Why did I send that to Nathan? That she didn't know anything about the loan, and now Nathan is furious and his parents are horrified. I tell her if she really didn't know anything, then she should be furious with our parents, not me, and she hangs up on me. Then she sends me like 50 messages saying she confronted our parents, and they admitted they did everything without telling her, that she fought with them, that they're crying, that everything is a disaster. Honestly, I don't know whether to believe her or not, because knowing Jennifer and knowing my parents, it seems very weird that they would do something that big without consulting her first. But I guess it's possible. Maybe my parents thought it was better to keep her out of it so she could have her perfect wedding without guilt. I don't know. I respond, telling her, "I'm sorry for involving Nathan, but she has to understand. This affects me directly, and I have a right to protect myself legally." Nathan calls me the next day and sounds very calm, but I can hear he's angry underneath. That calm, he tells me he had no idea about any of this, that Jennifer had told him her parents had saved for years for the wedding, and that now he doesn't know what to think. I tell him I understand, that he's not at fault for anything, that I just thought he deserved to know before getting married. He asks me if I'm going to proceed legally against my parents, and I tell him yes, that I have no choice because this debt is destroying my life plans. He says he understands and thanks me for telling him even though the situation is horrible. 3 days later, Jennifer calls me again, this time crying, and tells me Nathan called off the wedding. She says he told her he can't marry someone whose family operates like this, that even though she didn't know about the loan, he doesn't trust the family dynamics and doesn't want to risk having legal or financial problems in the future by association with my parents. Part of me feels bad for Jennifer because yes, it's true, she probably didn't ask for this. But another part of me thinks, she's been living a life subsidized by my parents, at my expense, literally in this case, for years. And maybe this is the universe balancing itself out. I tell Jennifer I'm genuinely sorry about the wedding, that if she wants, I can talk to Nathan and explain better that she had nothing to do with this. She tells me she'd consider it, but right now she's too angry with everyone, me included, to think clearly. We hang up, and honestly, I think that's probably the last time I'm going to talk to my sister for a long time. But it turns out it wasn't the last time. Like a week later, someone knocks on my door at 9 p.m. I open it, and it's Jennifer standing there with red eyes like she'd been crying for hours. She tells me she needs to talk to me, that there's something she has to tell me. I let her in. Even though I really don't want drama right now because I already have enough with the lawyers and banks and all this shit. She sits on my couch, and after like 5 minutes of awkward silence, she finally tells me, "I knew." And I'm like, "You knew what?" And she says, About the loan. I knew Dad and Mom were going to use your name. I agreed to it. And honestly, it was like getting punched in the stomach because part of me had wanted to believe she was innocent in all this, that she was another victim of our parents' decisions. But no, she knew. She agreed. She basically robbed me too. I ask her why the hell she's telling me this now, and she says because she feels guilty. That the fight with my parents she told me about was staged, so I would think she didn't know anything. That Nathan broke up with her. Not just because of the loan, but because when he confronted her, she admitted she knew and thought it was okay because family has to help each other. She says Nathan told her she was as toxic as our parents, and that's what really made her realize what she'd done. I don't know what to say to her, honestly. I just sit there looking at her, and all I can think is that this person is my sister. We share blood. We grew up in the same house, and she betrayed me so easily for a wedding. I ask her if she understands that loan basically destroyed my plans to open my business, that I'd been working toward that goal for years. And she says at the time she didn't think about it, that she was just focused on having the perfect wedding, and Dad and Mom told her you have a good job and won't have problems paying your part. I tell her that's not the point, that it's not about whether I can or can't pay it, but that they took away my right to decide about my own life. Jennifer starts crying again and says she's sorry, that she lost Nathan because of this, that our parents are furious with her for telling me the truth, that she basically lost everything. And you know what? I don't feel sorry for her. Absolutely none. I tell her she made her choices and now has to live with the consequences, just like I have to live with the consequences of what they did to me. She leaves my apartment, and that really was the last time I talked to her. The legal process lasted like 2 months. My parents at first tried to fight, hired a lawyer who basically had no case because the evidence was clear. I didn't sign those documents, and they did it without my consent. Their lawyer eventually told them it was better to reach a settlement out of court because if we went to trial, they almost surely were going to end up with more serious criminal charges. My parents agreed to pay the entire loan themselves and also compensate me with an additional amount for damages, basically gave me like an additional $50,000. And I agreed not to proceed with criminal charges if they complied with the entire agreement. We signed everything in October. The bank was notified. My name was officially removed from the loan, and I received the settlement money. My parents basically had to sell their house and move to something much smaller to be able to raise the money, and honestly, I don't feel even a little bit bad about that. They played a stupid game, won a stupid prize. The funny thing is, Jennifer moved to Colorado like a week after Nathan broke up with her. I don't know if it was to start over or just to get away from the whole situation, but my parents told me by text message, "We don't talk in person anymore," that she left, and they have no idea when she's coming back. Part of me thinks maybe it was best for her. Really start from scratch in a place where nobody knows anything about this mess. I quit my job last week. With the settlement money and my savings, I have enough to live comfortably for at least 2 years, while I establish my business, and honestly, I feel freer than I've felt in years. Yes, I lost my family in the process, and there are moments when that hurts more than I thought it would. But I also realize they never really valued me. To them, I was always secondary. I was always the son who was there to serve their purposes. They never saw me as a person, with my own dreams and needs. I haven't talked to my parents in person since we signed the agreement. My mom sends me messages, sometimes asking how I am, telling me they miss me. But I only respond with short things like, "I'm fine. Thanks." I don't really have anything to say to them. Jennifer hasn't contacted me since that night at my apartment, and honestly, I hope she does well in Colorado, but I have no desire to have a relationship with her after all this. My friend Peter asked me a few days ago if I would ever forgive my family, if in the future, maybe there could be a reconciliation. I told him honestly I don't know. That maybe with time the anger will subside, but the damage they did is too deep. It's not just about the money or the loan. It's about the fact that 3 people who were supposed to love me unconditionally betrayed me in the most calculated way possible. That doesn't get erased easily. What I do know is that now I have the opportunity to build the life I always wanted, without having to worry about my family's expectations or their constant favoritism toward Jennifer. I'm working on the final details of my startup. I have some meetings scheduled with potential investors in the coming weeks. And for the first time in a long time, I feel excited about the future instead of resentful about the present. Yesterday, I was organizing papers at home and found an old photo of when Jennifer and I were kids. We must have been like 8 and 5, respectively. We're in the yard of my parents' house, smiling, with our hands linked. I stared at that photo for a good while, thinking about how things changed so much, how we went from there to this. But then I put the photo in a box in the closet and went on with my day. Because living in the past doesn't change anything, and I have a future to build. I guess the lesson here, if there is one, is that blood isn't always thicker than water, that sometimes the people who can hurt you most are the people closest to you, and that it's okay to walk away from toxic relationships even if those relationships are with family. I don't regret anything I did. Not reporting the fraud, not telling Nathan, not proceeding legally. I did what I had to do to protect myself and protect my future. And if that means I no longer have a family, well, maybe that's the price you have to pay for respecting yourself.